what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Footcandle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Footcandle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello and welcome to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. My name is Alan. As I point across from me, I am pointing at Chris.
Hello,
Chris. How are you doing?
Listeners. I'm doing well. Very well.
This is one of our patented late night recordings.
Yes.
Which we don't get to do very often. A lot of our recordings are during the day.
Yep.
So
we've got our smoking jackets on. We've got our pipes. We've got like a nice glass of wine. Yeah. The fire's going over this side.
It's all good here. So I may be talking a little slower. It's been a long, busy day, but you know what? I always get excited and ready and energetic to talk about films. And that's what we're here to do. Talk about movies, talk about some movies we've seen recently. We actually have two films we're going to be reviewing today. And they both have a music kind of a theme to them, which is great. A lot of times, Chris, when we do reviews of two films, they're normally very opposite. We almost kind of balance them out a little bit. A really dark, serious film within maybe a lighter, big blockbuster action movie or something. Here we've got two movies that actually have some similarity to them. Mainly they're all about music. Right. We're going to be talking first about the quote documentary, unquote, Popstar, Never Stop, Never Stopping is the full name of the film, which stars Andy Samberg and his partners from The Lonely Island. And then we'll follow that up with a review of the latest film from John Carney, who brought us Once and Begin Again in the past. And that film is called Sing Street. We'll be discussing those two reviews, and then we'll be moving on to some movie news items, finishing up the episode, as always, with our recommendations of the show, where both Chris and I will share a film with you that we feel like either we just caught back up with or we remembered seeing, and we think is worth recommending to you, our listening audience. Chris, sounds like a good game plan?
Yes.
We ready to get started?
Absolutely.
Let's do our first one then. Our first review is Popstar, Never Stop, Never Stopping.
Okay, where to start? Ever since I was born, I loved music. As soon as I could, I started a band.
Right away, we knew he was something special.
Gosh. Immediately, I said, man, this guy right here, he's gonna make it big.
Connor, for real, is actually saving the record industry.
Everybody's just waiting to see, what he does next.
Connor's hot.
You tell me you didn't see him and say, yo, he's the star.
Chris, with Popstar, Never Stop, Never Stopping, we have fellas that call themselves The Lonely Island. I don't know how familiar you are with a lot of the work they've done on Saturday Night Live with their shorts, the little, what do they call those? The digital shorts they do on Saturday Night Live. Andy Samberg is the one that's been a Saturday Night Live cast member and been starred in a few other films. And then his partners, both comedic partners, acting partners, they write and direct together, Akiva Schaffer and Jorma Taccone. So the three of them form The Lonely Island, is kind of their comedic group, if you will. They've put out comedy albums and they've done a lot of interesting video shorts before. This is a feature-length film, and it is in the style of a documentary about a musical group, a kind of a pop group, their ups and downs. It really starts to focus on the one lead singer and kind of his solo career that follows shortly afterwards. I love films about music.
Right.
I love documentaries, good documentaries about music and musicians. But I also feel like that, just like I think VH1 kind of maybe ruined this for a lot of people, there's that formulaic, we're going to follow the rise and fall and ups and downs of this musical career, and we're going to really over dramatize parts of it.
It's the whole behind the music.
Exactly. The behind the music
story
thing.
arc. Yeah.
And I think that seemed to be where Popstar was going with this angle. Let's make a documentary about the rise, fall, and rise again of this musical act. So, Chris, the biggest question when you watch a film like this is got to be, was it funny? It's ripping on something that honestly, there's a lot of things, either short films or feature length films that have kind of ripped on the same topic before of pompous stars and pop stars and the music industry in general. So I just here to ask you, you've told me before the way we review a comedy is, did it make you laugh? So I'm asking you right now, did this film make you laugh?
Right. And, not that all film criticism isn't subjective because, it's personal taste. But yeah, with a comedy, that is kind of the barometer. It's like, okay, if this is supposed to be a comedy, did I laugh and how much did I laugh?
Yes.
So yes, I did laugh.
Okay.
I liked this movie. I thought it was funny. I will say that if you are maybe overly familiar with The Lonely Island, maybe you have all their comedy albums and you've also seen all their digital shorts, I could see the criticism that this movie may wear a little thin for you because you're kind of like, okay, yeah, you're over their shtick. And instead of being a digital short, which is maybe 5 or 10 minutes, this is a, hour and a half movie. So I could see how you could say it would wear thin. But for me, I kind of knew who they were. But as far as their music, the only one that I really knew was the Everything Is Awesome that they were responsible for
the Lego movie. Yes.
Which they actually have a throwaway reference to in the movie, which was cool. But yeah, I did laugh. And I think the barometer for me was there's a song that's done early on in the film that's Finest Girl, parenthesis, the Osama bin Laden song or the Bin Laden song. You can find the music video for this on YouTube. It is not kid-friendly. This is a rated R movie. But if you go watch that music video and you find it offensive and you think it is dumb, don't bother watching this movie.
Yeah, good point.
However, if you find it offensive but wildly funny and you laugh, then this movie is probably going to be funny for you. To me, it's, because some things they do kind of cross a line, but it's the type of humor for me it's kind of like South Park humor, and they don't seem to be doing a lot of movies anymore. But it's kind of that because they've gone on to make Broadway plays, the South Park guys. But that's what this kind of is they're kind of a newer version of the Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Lonely Island is kind of taking that sarcasm, but being very clever and very talented with it, and kind of doing humor on a different kind of plane. And I've complained before about Mr. Seth MacFarlane, guy of Family Guy, who made that Million Ways to Die in the West. And that was supposed to be a comedy, didn't really make me laugh that much, thought it was terrible. You've seen both of the Ted movies.
No, I haven't seen the second one.
You haven't seen the second one.
Just saw the first one.
So, comedy can be very, I guess more so than normal. It's very like personal taste.
Yes, absolutely.
So it did make me laugh. How about you?
It did make me laugh. I came away a little disappointed, but probably because I had some different expectations.
Okay.
I'm very familiar with these guys' work.
Okay.
The film MacGyver. Did you ever see, or MacGruber? I'm sorry, but did you ever see MacGruber?
No, I did not.
Did you ever see Hot Rod?
And you've recommended that on this show.
Yes, I have.
Okay. I have seen Hot Rod.
Okay.
And that actually kind of made me a little worried about this movie.
Yeah, Hot Rod will do that to you. I'm the kind of guy where I found enough humor in Hot Rod to still find it funny.
Oh.
And MacGruber, I think, is hilarious.
That was a movie recommendation that you've made on this show that I need to check out because I still have not seen it.
I think those films are really funny.
Okay.
But the reason I like them, I guess, the reason I find them funny is when they go absolutely just ridiculous, like just over the top bonkers in some parts. That was what I felt like was kind of missing from this a little bit, is that I felt like it was funny and I found myself laughing many, many places.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, I felt like they also played it very safe and simple. It's the whole, I knew exactly where they were going to go with all the gags. I felt like, okay, yes. And of course, now they're going to show this kind of scene and make fun of this kind of thing happening. And it was exactly what I expected. And it was critical and it was funny and it had great humorous moments. But at the end of the day, I thought, there wasn't anything in this film really much that to me was just, wow, I can't believe they went there and I can't believe they did that.
Okay. So. I hear what you're saying, but I think you're completely wrong.
Okay, fair enough.
No, but I hear what you're saying, and I've heard that same criticism of this movie, and I think this movie is not interested in making. And not that you're saying this, but I think a lot of people want maybe to go a little further, or to have, not that they're looking for a statement in a comedy, but I think they're just trying to throw as much out there and see what sticks. But the stuff to me that was a little deeper than what I was expecting was actually the Bin Laden song.
Yeah.
Because there's stuff there. I mean, yes, it's funny and it's offensive, but if you think about some of the things they're kind of commenting on about, taking Osama bin Laden down, like there's some subtext there.
They're smart guys.
Right.
And I think there's a lot
it's
of smart
not just
humor.
an offensive song or it's not like they're just making a song about a fart joke.
Well, let me back up and say that I thought the most ingenious parts and probably the most daring parts of the film were the songs themselves.
Okay.
I thought the songs were really good.
Okay.
So,
interesting you say that.
Yeah.
Okay, because now I disagree with that. But okay, so I'm not ruining anything because I won't go into
this isn't really a movie you got to worry about spoiling.
But there's a Bin Laden song. That's all I'll say about it. I like that one. The very first song I can't remember the name of it, but it's about gay rights. Okay, that's I can't remember the name of it. That song too has some stuff going on.
Oh yeah,
because there's he's coming out for gay rights and supporting gay rights, yet.
Constantly making comments throughout the song about how he's not gay.
Right. And so that whole thing, especially, spoiler, Alan and I live in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. So with everything that's gone on in the state of North Carolina recently, watching that in a movie theater was very interesting. So, it is comedy. I did laugh. And I did think in some ways, not pushing boundaries about making commentary about a pop star like Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
Like, no, they weren't pushing anything in that limit, but some of the other buttons they were kind of pushing I thought were interesting. What I found disappointing, and I would say was my disappointment for the movie, is kind of how you said the songs. Those two I thought were awesome, but Mr. Connor For Real,
yes,
he is known for a song because he had a boy band called the Style Boys. And they got their big hit was Donkey Roll.
Yes.
So, me being the typical movie viewer, you hear about this, they kind of tease at certain points. So I'm like, okay. And you kind of know formulaic, they're going to have the performance of Donkey Roll. I was really disappointed.
Well, the song really wasn't that good. It's more about just this ridiculous dance move that goes along with
which
it. Yeah.
That didn't really impress me either.
Yeah.
So I think that was the thing is like, my jaw dropped because I want to say it was the first song before. I wish I could remember the order. I just saw this recently. Only seen it once. But I think the Bin Laden song may have been first.
There was a song that Adam Levine played, was in a hologram with them, and it was a big concert thing. They did the Bin Laden pretty early on, and then it was followed pretty quickly.
Was that
after
the gay rights song?
No, the gay rights was like when they were doing a flashback to them with the Style Boys, I think, or something like that, or him going solo for the first time. I don't recall.
Okay, yeah. But
it was all pretty early. I will say the film loses traction for me towards the end. I think by the end of the film, at that point, it kind of run its course a little bit. The songs were not as clever. The moments were not as great. I agree with you on that. I thought the Mona Lisa song, which was just a small clip, was really funny.
Mona Lisa was also good. This is the thing, it's kind of like I guess it fits because Andy Samberg is from Saturday Night Live, so we're doing the Chris Farley whole thing. Like, do you remember that moment?
Right, yeah.
But with a comedy, that's the thing. And there were several scenes that made us laugh. I
will say this.
My jaw dropped when the Bin Laden song. I was like, oh my gosh.
And see, here's the problem for me is I had already heard the Bin Laden song and saw a video for it because it was on Saturday Night Live just a couple weeks ago. They actually showed it as a digital short for that. So I heard the song.
They just bleeped stuff, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely.
Whoa.
But so I'd seen it.
Okay.
And I thought, that's really funny. So I guess when it got to it in the movie, it's like, oh yeah, there's that song again. So I was not opened up to it the first time like you were in the movie. That might have helped you a little bit more than it helped me watching the film.
Question. We're going all over the place with this review, but that's kind of how the movie goes.
Yeah.
The big moment also of the movie is kind of this song they do with Michael Bolton.
Oh, yeah.
Had that been done before on Saturday Night Live?
I never heard that one, no.
Okay.
They had done a song with Michael Bolton as a digital short several years ago.
Maybe that's
it was
what I was
not that
of.
song, though.
Okay.
They just seem to really enjoy doing things with Michael Bolton.
And who doesn't?
Right. I will say, I thought the movie was funny.
Okay.
It's just, I thought some of the jokes and the bits were just a little routine. I just felt like I thought any comedian could make this movie. And I didn't see enough uniqueness that I was really hoping for the Lonely Island guys to add to the mix. There were a few moments that really just worked for me. I will say I still think the funniest, not scene or moment, but the overall general subplot that I really just found fun was the one member of the group who was no longer with the group.
Who's the farmer?
Yeah. And I mean, at first it started out, it's like, of course, they're going to make him be this just out in the middle of nowhere farmer, and that's going to be so cliche. And I thought that was a little routine. But as it started to progress and he's showing his woodwork that he's doing, and then you realize what he's growing out in the farm with, it started to get a little more ridiculous. I'm like, that's what I wanted. Take something that could be a funny, simple subplot and really just start to kind of ramp it up a little bit each time you see it. That's what I wanted from the rest of the film too. And I didn't feel like I got it everywhere else. So overall, I still think it was funny. Okay. I'll still watch it again when it comes on HBO or Netflix or whatever.
Sure.
Because it is funny and there were a lot of moments that made me laugh. I think Andy Samberg is a very funny individual. I like watching him on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I liked him at Saturday Night Live. I really liked him in this movie as well. I felt like they were just playing it a little too formulaic and safe. Almost like, hey, you know what? The other movies we made haven't really made any money. We need something that might be a little more open to mainstream. So we're not going to go too far with it in left field. Let's keep it on that comedic, simple path. And it didn't appeal to me as much as I'd wanted to from that. But I still liked it. I'll give it a thumbs up. I'll give it a recommendation. Just
okay. Not
as strong as I kind of hoped maybe I would coming out of it.
Well, let me ask you another question that we've talked about the music. We've talked about if it made us laugh. Mm-hmm. Something that I've picked up on with social media and Twitter, people talking about the movie, the number. Now, granted, this, like you said, this is kind of a faux documentary.
Yes.
So you do have like interviews, or you do have
right.
But the sheer number of cameos that appear,
like real celebrities, and yes.
That appear in this movie. Some people have kind of slighted this movie for that it was kind of like a Where's Waldo, and there were just way too many, and I guess they felt it kind of took them out of the film because it was just like, Andy Samberg has all this money, so he just pays all these people to be in his movie. How do you feel about that?
I didn't care for any of the real celebrity interviews at all. I mean, I don't think any of them worked.
Okay.
I didn't find any of them funny. I actually maybe that feeds into a little bit of that. I just wanted them to go more ridiculous with it. And I felt like maybe that was trying to bring it in and ground it more.
Okay.
So they didn't work for me. I didn't think much about them afterwards. I think that's a little bit of that, let's play it safe and let's make something that's going to get more people in the theater as opposed to let's really just go nuts with this movie.
Because you can go and see Questlove talk about this fake band.
Yeah, and I guess the thing too, Chris, for me is, I don't know, I'm probably getting very nitpicky on this, but it's a simple matter of, if we're watching this film and we're watching Connor for real, and we see how ridiculous the songs are, the over-the-top performances, the stage presence, everything. But yet you've got real people making comments about how great he is and how good looking he is and all that. It's like, it was kind of just a conflicting style of humor. It's like, I almost wanted there to be fake other music stars.
Kind of let it exist in its own funny world.
I think the fact that they blended that real world and this fake world, and it was odd because it's like you see Andy Samberg, and Andy Samberg, my wife can attest to this, never seen as a really, really attractive guy. I think he kind of plays this, I don't know, even in the film here, you kind of get the sense that he's a little ridiculous looking most of the time.
Sure.
But yet you have real female celebrities talking about how hot he is and good looking. If they weren't real celebrities that we knew, I probably would find that very ironic and funny, but it's just that blending of things. It didn't work.
I can see that.
And also, I think the film lost a little bit of its whole documentary feel after a while. There were so many scenes that were not shot or acted to be anything like a documentary.
Right.
It was very much, it would slip into just normal dramatic scenes. Mm-hmm. So I almost feel like they had a conceit and they're like, but they couldn't carry that conceit through the whole film. So let's just make the scenes we think are funny, and it doesn't matter how they're shot or how they're presented.
Sure.
So a little bit of that, again, I just felt like they couldn't commit to this full documentary thing because that might have been a little more interesting,
but maybe also too constraining on their humor.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But they also really wanted to do a fake documentary because that's a funny thing to do. So
sure.
It was a mixed bag for me. I still liked it and thought it was funny, but I really think it was capable of more. So.
Okay.
I will say a few things. Again, the three main guys, the Lonely Island guys, I think are really funny. Sarah Silverman, that's another problem. We've got some known actors playing parts, but yet you're surrounded by all these other real celebrities playing themselves. So when you see Sarah Silverman on the screen, you're thinking, oh, it's Sarah Silverman playing Sarah Silverman. And no, she's playing a part, but it's not really like a part very different from herself. So, and Tim Meadows is the same way. He's in the film too. So it just made it an odd odd patchwork of film cliches and pieces.
Well, I'll agree with that. And I think those were the strong parts for me were the parts where they were just letting it play out kind of like a typical comedy. Like, the stage numbers where they're performing, and that was funny. And then some of the other jokes that weren't, I guess, done documentary style. Yeah, I agree. The interviews for me did nothing.
Work.
No, they did nothing. So
it's fun. I think there's a lot of good talent there. I think there's a lot of good comedy moments inside the film.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, as a film, it didn't work. I would rather watch individual scenes later on that I thought were really funny and watch them as individual scenes than to watch the whole movie as a whole, I guess, is the best way I could describe it at this point.
Sure.
So it was, I had a good time with it. It was fine. Just it could have been a lot more. It really could have.
I'm surprised, talking about it being successful or not being successful. I don't think the box office was that high.
No, absolutely not.
For this film, which kind of surprises me because, I don't know, I feel like summer comedy and he's made a big name for himself with these digital shorts and everything. I kind of thought this was going to be a really big deal, and it's kind of...
I just don't think their humor is matched with mainstream theater audience. I think they're very good and popular online in these short clips because they know how to work that. I mean, I can think back to some of the digital shorts they've done on Saturday Night Live that I just think are genius. And some of them are just so over the top and crazy. And there's a huge, huge number of people who love those online and will share them and retweet them and talk about them. I just don't think those are the same people that flock to the box office, to the movie theater to go see the latest movies that come out every weekend, Yeah. So I think it's a little bit, they're trying to put their comedy into a format that doesn't really fit their comedy as well.
Well, I would hate to think, there again, went on record, not that big of a fan of Hot Rod, but I would hate to see or to think that they don't have another film in them because I really liked it. It was one of the funnier movies I've seen in a while.
Yeah.
So I would hate to think that this is it for The Lonely Island and they just go back to just making shorts and they'll never do another feature.
Yeah, I know. And I'm hoping maybe the internet will be, I could see them doing something through Netflix where either original movies or shows or something, a medium where a younger generation that really is attracted to that kind of humor and they can do it in more different size segments and not feel like it's got to be a 1 hour and a half or 2 hour long movie.
Sure.
Oh, I definitely think they're going to do more things. That's great because I would be disappointed if they didn't either. But I just don't know if the traditional Cineplex 90-minute format is their thing. So anyway,
okay.
That is Popstar. Never Stop, Never Stopping. Chris is a little higher on it than I am. But both of us are positive. I do think it's a funny movie and worth checking out if that is your cup of tea. So next, we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about the latest film from writer and director John Carney. The song is Sing Street.
How come you're not in school?
I'm a model.
Cool. Do you want to be in a video for my band?
So if you're in a band, sing me a song.
Take on me. We need to form a band.
What?
Connor's putting a band together.
Oh, good Jesus.
You play every instrument known to mankind.
Probably.
Show 'em.
It's all about the girl, isn't it?
Yeah, we're back, and I just realized Chris just told me that. So I said the song is called Sing Street. It just goes to show you, Chris, I got music on the brain today, man. So this is all about songs and music today. So tell us a little bit about Sing Street.
Well, Sing Street is, like you said, it's the third major film from John Carney.
Right. I think you did one you were telling me beforehand, but nobody's ever heard of it. So we'll just say the third.
So we're going to say the third.
More known film.
Right. It centers on a boy growing up in Dublin during the 1980s, and he's trying to escape his strained family life by starting a band, and he's starting this band solely to impress this girl that he likes.
Yep.
So that's the kind of the storyline for this film. John Carney, you mentioned at the intro at the beginning of the show, known for Once and Begin Again. He does movies about music. He's big into that. Not only that, but he does movies about like independent musicians and forming bands. We reviewed Begin Again on the show.
Yes.
And I think you and I both felt that it was kind of like a weak Hollywoodized imitation version of Once.
Yes.
I mean, it was different in some respects, but more or less
I still liked it, but it just I think it's almost like let's take Once and let's make a more Hollywoodized, bigger budget with big star version of that kind of story.
So we have Sing Street, which you could say, has these more independent musicians. They're not in New York. This was set back in Ireland, like I believe Once was.
Yes.
So it's kind of, back in Ireland. Does it fall into the trappings of predictability or style-wise that John Carney does? Like, would you say, or is it wholly unique unto itself?
Mm-hmm. How did you feel this movie did? If you were to write out the plot of this film, just here's what happened. This character does this character does this, and in the end, they end up here. Yeah, it's predictable. All right, you look at it, you read the plot line, you're like, yeah, okay, and it sounds like a very familiar story.
And I've heard you reference.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've actually recommended it on the show, The Commitments.
Right, yes, which I am going to be referencing again here in a moment as well. So if I read the plot for Sing Street, it would sound very straightforward, standard, very pedestrian. I freaking love this movie. And I'll tell you, I love this movie because, the story's pretty straight. The story's pretty simple. Yeah, boy attracted to girl, boy starts a band to impress girl, and then there's boy-girl issues, girls with somebody else, boy was trying to get all mopey. It all ends up in a place that you kind of expect it's going to be by the end of the movie.
Sure.
But I think the journey to get there was just a lot of fun to watch. And I personally, I think this is John Carney's best film. I like it better than Once.
Wow.
And I'll say
that's
this
high praise.
because Once is good. It's really good. This movie just takes that same idea of connecting with music, and it just adds a whole layer of not only fun, I think some interesting characters. I mean, Once was great, but it really was focused on two characters.
Sure.
We have a lot more of a patchwork of things to work with in this film. It's almost like John Carney said, okay, Once is great. I made a small, very, very low budget movie with like 3 camcorders, and we did some great things with music. Now I'm going to go to Begin again, and I'm going to get this big budget and big stars and all that, and do it. And it's like, ooh, I actually don't like this anymore. I don't like that talk.
There's been some scuttlebutt in the news. Yeah.
So I'm going to scale back. Okay. I'm going to go back to unknown actors. I'm going to go back to a little bit more of a raw feel to it than what I had. So to me, it's almost like the perfect blending of the best things of those other 2 movies fitting into this third movie now. I think the music's great, but I'm probably very partial to that because I'm just a big 80s music fan addict anyway. So this obviously was set in the 80s. It's woven in a lot of external 80s music as well as some original songs that this band plays. I think the lead actor is amazing. Ferdia Walsh-Pilo.
Which is a very interesting name.
Very interesting name. Never been in another film. This is his film debut, and I thought he was really good.
I thought he was good as well.
And I thought the girl playing Rafina, the object of his affection, which is Lucy Boynton, she's been in other things, but I've never seen her before. And she's almost hypnotic, I think, after a while. She becomes a very interesting character in this film where I really didn't expect her character to be that interesting when you first meet her. So it had a lot of stuff going for it, as well as just it has some really good music, really interesting characters. It was just a lot of fun in places too. Had a nice mixture of humor with everything. There are a few beats that were a little predictable, a few beats that are a little it didn't work as well for me, but they didn't distract me from the movie as a whole. I thought overall, and I really liked the way it ended. The last scenes and shots we saw, which were very, I don't know how to describe the ending without giving too much away about it. It ends pretty much where you expect it to end, but there's some choices made in the last few shots and just where that action's taking in that last scene. I thought was just interesting. So overall, I really did. I love this film. Loved it a lot. What do you think?
I'm also a big fan of the film, and I think, like you're saying, I liked Once, but I liked the music in Once.
Yes,
and
exactly.
The film, was kind of throwaway for me. Begin Again, I don't know. Some bits of it worked, some didn't. So I was kind of, I think, like you're saying, it's the perfect Frankenstein monster of John Carney stuff. And what I really liked the humor best in this film, because Once doesn't really have humor. Begin Again did.
It was light. It didn't work as well.
No.
Yeah.
But this, I really liked the humor in this film, and I thought the music was good. But what really struck me about it is, that it's about a teenager growing up. So what's funny about the music is it's not just like one style of music. It's not like they said, okay, we're going to do this movie, and these boys are going to try to basically do knock off U2.
Yeah.
So they didn't just write like a couple of U2 songs and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
No, but they would choose different styles. So they kind of like try to do a Cure song, or kind of like a Talking Heads type song, or a Hall & Oates. So it's not like the different songs that the boys come up with. Maybe like a sad Beatles song, or like they do different styles all within. They change like the way their band looks, and it was more complicated than it needed to be, but I appreciated that.
Yeah,
like they could have made it,
Yeah, you're right. It could have been that, we're going to be a band, and here's the kind of music we play, and let's see if we can get a big gig somewhere, and very formulaic.
Right.
But you're right. There was just enough in there. And then you add in the layer of, which you mentioned in the synopsis of the film. I mean, it's about this kid's family life. I mean, even though so much of it's focused on him pining for the girl, you almost get the impression he's pining for the girl because he sees that as
a way out.
A way out.
Absolutely.
And because you see his home life. And there's been films that have depicted a more traumatic home life, but I felt like this was the most realistic I've seen in a while of a damaged home life.
Right. And what I appreciated also about this film, and at first you could say it's almost a knock. It's a knock against the film, that it, instead of taking any of the themes that it kind of touches on and exploring more, it just kind of lightly touches on them because it wants to be a happy, uplifting film. Well, in this instance, though, I appreciate the fact that they didn't hit on him too heavily. And actually, his family, his mom and dad are in a bad place. They're, talking about getting a divorce.
He's in the 80s.
He's in the 80s,
mid-80s in Ireland.
With all the economic problems.
People are leaving because they can't get jobs.
What that helped do for me, and it was in the opening scene, is you hear his parents fighting.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there trying to play guitar, and the lyrics he's coming up with are funny, but yet they're kind of upsetting because he's taking words that his mom and dad are yelling at one another and singing them.
Trying to weave them into a song.
And weaving them into a song. And it's funny, yet it's kind of like, wow.
It's an uncomfortable chuckle. You're chuckling because it's funny because the words he's using, but yet you realize he's writing these lyrics because that's what he's hearing.
Right.
Like every day, probably. So
that to me allowed the movie for him to be that creative and for him to be able to come up with these different types of songs, because from the very opening, it's like he's taking his surroundings and he's putting that in and he's making it work. Yeah, granted, is it believable that two guys can sit together and one starts singing, they just magically come up with all these music parts and they make a song? Well, maybe not, but this is a movie.
Yeah,
and
there's a little stretch there. I mean, I think a lot of times when you see a movie about people making music, it just seems way too oversimplified how easy people make a song together.
Right.
And this movie, there was one scene in particular I just thought, okay,
come on.
They really just sat down and all of a sudden they've come up with this really great pop song. It's like, it's a little bit of a stretch, but I'm willing to go along with it. It's the way that scene was done, if you recall, where the two start playing this song, and then all of a sudden the camera's panning around and the rest of the room's filled up with all the musicians.
The band's magically
It was enough of an interesting way of presenting that I got the impression that time has passed.
Well, and actually,
they have written this song out and fleshed it out.
And you could excuse it too, because the way that shot happened, it's like, yeah, we know this isn't real, so we're going to go ahead and show all the
we're
band
just going to go ahead and be fantastical about it anyway, right?
Yeah, so.
Yeah. I think you said it right. It was a perfect Frankenstein of his previous two films. And you're right about Once. Actually, the more I think about it, the music's what I love about Once. It's a good movie. And I like the two characters. I like listening to them talk. It kind of has a little bit of a before sunrise feel to it, that the two of them just getting in these long conversations and talking. But it really was the music that made me like Once. Begin Again, the music was good. It wasn't as powerful as Once.
Right.
I still listen to the soundtrack. I still like some of the songs.
Okay.
And I will say Begin Again actually works a little better on second viewing, because I did see it recently on Netflix, and it's a good movie. I mean, It could have been a lot worse. It could have been so contrived and trite, and it actually, I think, worked pretty well.
Okay.
But this pulled enough of the little deeper story, a little more interesting characters from Begin Again, and the music, the nature of creating music out of Once, and made it just a really great movie here. So
I think I found myself wanting more story from the bass player and the drummer.
Yeah, I know. They were interesting.
Because they formed together this band, and basically it's the lead guitarist, or I guess instrumentalist, and then the lead singer that you kind of know, and then the other members of the band are kind of background.
They really become more like session players.
Sure, but they seem very interesting because the way they're set up, you're like, there's some interesting stuff going on there.
Yeah,
but interesting.
I will say, and I'll go into a little bit of negatives. I mean, I don't feel like it's a perfect film, but I do love the film. I will just say, for the record, I love this film. The thing that probably bugged me a little bit, and it won't bug most people, but you mentioned the film The Commitments, kind of on the front end. And I love The Commitments. It is one of my 20 favorite films. And I saw it in college and just was really taken by it. It takes place in Ireland. It's about a band that forms. They play more 60s soul music than anything.
And all covers.
But they're a very talented band. It was the same idea. They were all true musicians. They didn't like lip sync or play sync or anything. I mean, it was truly them playing. And they go through their ups and downs as a band. There's a lot of similarities to The Commitments. And there's a few moments where I don't mind that. I understand this is Ireland. I think the accent, the environment, the look and feel of everything around them kind of build some similarity between the two films. Because in The Commitments, they were also living in a little more impoverished area and downtrodden, and they were just trying to find some way out as well.
All right.
There were just a few moments where it was almost a little too intentional lifting stuff from The Commitments. There's a school bully at the Sing Street School, and he becomes a part of the band in some way later on, much like a little bit of a rough guy did in The Commitments as well. So same idea. I get the impression John Carney is probably a really big fan of that movie.
Got you.
So I'm okay with that. And I don't mind that you cast the same woman who was one of the singers in The Commitments as the mother in this film.
Gotcha.
That's a nice throwback as well.
So you're saying imitation is the sincerest form of
when you start
flattery.
pulling another thing in The Commitments, there's a lot of motif of people approaching at the door and the door opening, and you're either meeting a new musician or interviewing musicians and all that. There's a lot of that approaching the door and opening the door thing in this thing too. Again, it just seemed like it was almost I want to make a new version of The Commitments, which I'm okay with.
An 80s version.
And he might have gone just a little too far in pulling some of the actual pieces from it. But again, that's such a minor point. Again, didn't distract me from loving this film. Just we're doing film review here. We got to pick apart something. We can't just sit here and say it was great and just walk away. So, what did you have some misgivings on the film? Some things that didn't work for you as well?
No. And it's interesting because during the course of the review, you made me like it more, but then talking about how much it reflects The Commitments, now you've made me like it less. So
no.
It's like
don't
roller
like it
coasting.
less,
Not a whole lot less, but it's like you've been roller coastering my opinion as I've been listening. I will say two scenes that stick out, and I know they do for you as well, but it's like the scenes that I think are really good. Is the performance that he does where it's supposed to mimic like the band scene or the prom scene from Back to the Future.
Oh yeah.
And now,
such a good scene.
Now, okay, I like it not because it has anything to do with Back to the Future, but because it's such an interesting use of what the guy has in his head and what is really happening. Just, I don't know, it's just a very interesting switch kind of in tone, but it doesn't take me out of the movie because it's important to what's happening.
It's both an entertaining scene, and we're talking about just, he has a performance at one point, and they're working on a video, and he has a very distinct vision in his head of what it should look like.
Right.
And that's important, what it looks like, but it's more important who's in it.
Right.
And you see his vision while he's performing the song of what he would love to see around him. That would make him just so happy. And then it's heartbreaking at the end of the song when you realize that none of that happened.
Right.
And,
well, you kind of actually,
what
almost not upset me, but what took me back at first is they do kind of a little bit of a switch. And I thought at first, wait a second, it was light outside. Now it's dark out. There's continuity there. And then you're like, oh no, I see what's happening here. And that was so cool.
Yeah.
My second moment actually is, I guess, a moment and a half. So they have this big performance towards the end of the film, and he does this slow song. And I totally thought I knew what was going to happen at the conclusion of that slow song. and it didn't.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. And then...
Well, I'll tell you, even on that slow song, another thing is that you get the impression, because it's a really good slow song.
It is.
You get the impression that it's going to be this big success. Mm-hmm. Because all of a sudden he's like bearing his soul to the audience.
Well, and it's kind of risky because they've done all these fast songs.
But
and
at the end of the song, like 2 people clap.
Right.
And it's like, you think to yourself, in a high school dance, that's probably what would have happened. No matter how good the song is.
They don't want slow
not connecting
songs.
with it. Yeah.
No, and then right after that song, they play their last song of the night.
Mm-hmm. Brown Shoes.
Yeah. And so the lyrics of that song and then kind of the rousing thing they do for their audience, just well played.
I'll say with that rousing thing they did, and not to spoil that, but visually it was kind of cool to see, like when it was panning the crowd and just what you saw out in the crowd from this little act that they were doing, a little bit of an act of rebellion.
Absolutely.
And it was just, it was kind of a weird, creepy but cool moment. So,
which is why I liked it.
Yeah, I know.
Creepy, cool. I'm all over that.
I thought this film worked. What did you think about the very end? I mean, I'm talking like right before the credits end. I mean, it was an interesting scene. And again, we're not going to spoil it. There were some moments in the theater last night. I know you and I just saw this tonight. I saw it for the second time.
Sure.
There were some moments in the theater last night where I think people were thinking the film was going to take a very, very
dark
weird turn.
Okay.
And it didn't.
Nope.
But I thought that flirtation with it and just that little bit of moment of kind of keeping you wondering where it's going, I thought was really well done. I liked it a lot.
Well, and okay. So without revealing anything, we're not going to reveal anything about the end, but that kind of tension was something that was there, but then everything's okay. There's some moments, the girl, you mentioned that, you thought she was going to be a very one-dimensional character, Rafina. You thought she was just going to be the object of my affection. You have the typical roller coaster ride with the girlfriend in the movie. There's some subtext with her character, with kind of her history and her background. And they never really go into great lengths about it. But there's a whole lot there to give kind of a background character or a supporting character that much subtext was really interesting. And then kind of the family members, this guy is kind of, he has a troubled family and he has a sister and a brother and they're, upset by the divorce too. And all this stuff going on and the brother feeling like he's, he dropped out of college and there's all this, it's like you said, it's Depression Ireland. There's all this stuff there that could weight this movie down and make it really heavy, but instead it's there, but the comedy and the hope of the film overcomes that.
Well,
but not in a cheesy way, I think.
No.
And so I respect that because I think if you do one of the two things, if you don't acknowledge it at all, then the movie just comes off as just being a fluff piece that's not interesting. If you make it really sad and depressing, then it may win some Oscars, but it's sad and depressing. So,
well, you get the impression, and I kind of equated a little bit to The Graduate. In The Graduate, the very last scene, the two main characters run off together and they kind of end up on a school bus or something because they don't have any other means of transportation. And there's a moment where they're just looking at each, like they're just kind of staring off like, crap, what did we just do?
Right.
And I think there was a little bit of that moment at the end of this film too, with two of the main characters, the choices they've made. And I think both with the weather that's playing an impact on this final scene and just their emotions were flipping between terror and elation.
Sure.
And I think that just, it all worked for me. It's like, okay, yeah, they're going off into a very unknown direction at this point, and it's terrifying, but it's also satisfying. And just, I just thought that last scene kind of worked, especially after watching it a second time.
And what's interesting, they're getting so hard to talk about without spoiling
We're
things.
doing pretty good though so far.
We're trying. Okay, that last scene and what happens on screen mirrors a conversation that Connor had with his brother.
Oh, yeah.
And what's interesting about that conversation, because we just watched this with an audience, is that conversation starts off with the brother saying some things, and some of it's kind of funny.
It's a little funny.
And then it gets a little more serious, and to where it ends with kind of him making this final statement, and there's like dead silence in the theater. But some of the stuff he was saying, he was being kind of mean-spirited, but it was kind of funny, and it was kind of
it was a really good scene.
But like he just kind of builds and builds and builds, and then you're like, oh.
Yeah.
But like how that kind of happened and the mirror of that in that final scene, just interesting, clever little things. So
Yeah, I'm actually liking this film more the more I talk about it. So,
So I've talked you back up.
yeah, no, I was never down. It's just,
Sure.
Again, if I had to pick the one thing, if somebody said, well, what's wrong with the film? I'd say, well, the only thing is I just felt like it cribbed a little too much from a classic film that I love. But, not many people saw The Commitments. So maybe this is John Carney saying, hey, more people need to see The Commitments.
I'll say this, the fact that he cast that woman, like it has a cast member, like I feel like it's not like he's not trying to acknowledge it.
He's
I think
absolutely
he's proudly wearing
acknowledging
on his sleeve.
I think he would probably be happy as anything if everybody went out to go see The Commitments.
Sure.
So, and even once his first popular film, got an Oscar nomination for Best Song. The lead actor was one of the band members.
So Glenn Hansard
was a bass player for The Commitments.
Got you.
Had speaking parts and everything of the film. So he obviously is a fan of that and has a connection to that community as well. So that's Sing Street. I think we're both highly recommending the film.
Yes.
I think it was a great, I always judge a film that we show for our normal monthly screenings, whether I stay to watch it the second night or not. And I had plenty of work to do, Chris. I could have sat at the local Chinese restaurant and just worked for an hour and a half. I didn't. I'm going to pay for it tomorrow at work, but it was worth it to watch this film again. So, yeah. Good. Sing Street, still out in select theaters, I think, at the time we're talking. I don't think it's gone to online digital or anything quite yet, but probably won't be too long before you can get it online pretty easily. Sure. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hit a few movie news items, and we will wrap up the show with our recommendation of the episode. You're listening to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I'm with the Band on themesh.tv features regional music acts discussing their craft and live performances. Subscribe to I'm with the Band on themesh.tv and swim around in the heads of your favorite regional musicians.
Welcome back to Footcandle Films here on themesh.tv. You are listening to a podcast. And
that's right.
Yeah, that's just in case you stumbled across us somewhere and you found this on our website. Trust me, this is a podcast, and this is how podcast works. We sit around microphones and we talk on a regular basis. What makes a podcast different than just guys pressing record on a computer and then putting the file up on the internet? Well, the difference is you can subscribe to a podcast, and that's because we're here every couple weeks recording an episode. So if you're still with us at this point, you're probably finding something decent to enjoy from this conversation. Maybe just a little tiny bit. We're not expecting you to love it all the time, but if you like it, we do recommend subscribe to the show. All that means is every time Chris and I sit down and record an episode, you're going to get it downloaded to your iPod, your iPhone. Do people have iPods anymore, or is it just all phones?
Somebody probably does.
Somebody does. If you have an iPod, you can download it to the iPod. iPhones, iPads, Galaxy devices, whatever else. Anything with an internet connection, more likely you'll find a way to play a podcast on there. But again, you want to subscribe to the show. That's what's key. And that way you get it downloaded. You don't have to go search for it every time we put up a new episode. And it's just like recording on a DVR on your TV. It's always there waiting for you. Yes, you can hit the delete button if you don't feel like watching or listening to it, but it's there and it's your choice. And that's what's important. Here, go America. So that's podcasting. That's on themesh.tv. You can go listen to old episodes. We don't charge a dime for it. Go check out old stuff.
Wait, we don't? There goes my retirement plan.
I've been lying to you all this time. You're not going to get paid from this. I'm sorry. I should have told you earlier. But what you can do is go back and listen for free and share. And hey, if we have sponsors mixed in every once in a while, check those sponsors out. We'd appreciate that. That would help. But there are also other shows on the Mesh Network. So I will even say we had a new one that just started a couple months ago. If you're a sports fan, which I am for certain sports, I do like sports quite a bit. But we have a show called One More Thing, which is hosted by Adam Moore. See how we did that with the name?
There.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And he, in about 15, 20 minutes, a couple times a week, gives you everything you need to know about sporting news. Everything. If you want to know the latest thing in soccer that's going on, big news, he's probably talking about it. You want to know what's going on with the NBA Finals? He's talking about it. And he's just a talented guy, so we're glad to have him on the network. So check that out. That's One More Thing with more with 2 O's, Moore. But again, go to themesh.tv and you'll see all the shows up there ready for you to download, ready for you to subscribe, and give it a shot and let us know what you think. All right, so Chris, getting back to we'll go into our movie news now. Okay. This is what we typically do after we review a couple of films. Is Chris and I, we have some moments during our busy work days. We may pour through the internet and see if there's some interesting news that catches our eye that we want to bring to each other's attention. And we normally try to find ones that we think maybe the other person might have some passing interest in. Just go ahead and say that. So let me start with the first one, if that's okay.
Sure.
Chris, you and I were both big fans of the television show Battlestar Galactica. Not the 1970s version. I enjoyed that.
When it first came out, I thought it was like the bee's knees. But yeah, that doesn't really hold up.
We're talking about the reboot that was in the 2000s.
Yes.
This was, I want to say it was like in the 2000s decade. It's been many years since it finished up that
maybe
show.
Maybe like a run from like maybe 2010 to 2014 or maybe.
No, I don't think it was that recent.
No,
I think it was like 2006, 8, 9, somewhere in there. Okay. I don't know. This is going to bug me now, so we'll have to look it up and see. Regardless of what, there's been 2 iterations of Battlestar Galactica.
Right.
The one that was kitschy and cool back in the 70s, and then there's the really, really good one that was done recently.
And then they tried to do Caprica, which I kind of liked.
I liked Caprica too, but it just didn't hold up quite as well.
And then they only did that for like a season, I think.
Well, as the movie industry is ought to do,
they're looking for a property.
They are making a film of Battlestar Galactica. Now, every indication I'm seeing so far is it's not going to be any kind of continuation of the series that was just in the last 10 years. It will be a true restart, new Battlestar Galactica. And this is kind of a little connection points
that's
here.
Weird because the series, the newer series done in the 2000s, that also kind of rebooted like a character. Starbuck was a woman instead of so they did all this.
It wiped it clean and started fresh.
So now they're going to wipe clean again.
Probably so.
See, I think that's going to be, I can see why they don't want to continue the TV series, but I think it's going to be hard to wipe it clean again in such a cool way. Like they got a pretty high watermark.
Well, that's the problem I see is that, we talked about the Ghostbusters reboot at the last episode. Mm-hmm. And I think you and I are both of the mentality of, give it a shot. Why not? Who knows? Sure. The difference there is that Ghostbusters was a singular movie. We're not even going to talk about Ghostbusters 2 because that sucked. The first Ghostbuster was a singular movie, and now this reboot is happening almost 30 years later. I'm okay with that.
Sure.
I think the challenge, I actually think this is a little bit more of a treacherous situation in that the recent series was not that long ago.
Oh, no. It was pretty recent.
And it's still very fresh in people's minds. Mm-hmm. And it was very well respected.
Yeah.
And it actually ended at a certain point. It didn't go on forever. It kind of closed up after a certain number of seasons. So that becomes a little more treacherous. And it being the second reboot already that we're talking about. It's kind of like what they're doing with the whole Spider-Man thing. I mean, Spider-Man, we're getting into the 3rd iteration now of the character. People are... can be a little jaded about that. And I don't blame them because we've already seen this happen twice now.
When he says people, he means me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, basically, yeah. When I look up people in the dictionary, there's Chris's face.
Chris is jaded.
Chris. Yeah. So HBO is working on a TV series that's supposed to be coming out next year called Westworld, based on the Michael Crichton book, which was based also, a movie came out of it back in the 70s, I believe.
Okay.
Didn't that have Yul Brynner in it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cowboy.
Now they're making they're kind of doing what they did with Battlestar Galactica, in that Battlestar Galactica back in the 70s was a little corny, a little cheesy at times.
Sure.
But it had a good following. Mm-hmm. Westworld, same thing. It was a 70s movie, sci-fi movie. Now they're making a very prestigious, very, very solid version. I think even Anthony Hopkins is in it.
Oh, wow.
It's an HBO series. It's going to start up next year. The reason I mention this is that the person who's been writing Westworld for HBO has been set to adapt Battlestar Galactica now into a film for Universal. Bryan Singer was attached to direct it at one point.
Let me guess. Now after Apocalypse, he's not.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
So the quote in the Variety just says, but he has since moved on, unquote. Right now, the studio is talking to the Hunger Games director, Francis Lawrence. Which, I mean, the first couple of Hunger Game movies were okay. I did not see the last 2, so I can't really comment on how it went from there. But so anyway, that's where we are with it.
Interesting.
I do not, like we talked about last episode, I don't want to be that guy that says, no, don't ever remake. That's bad. That's bad. Because there's been some really good things that have come out of remakes.
Absolutely. If
I had said that about the Battlestar Galactica series, before the new one came out, then I never would have seen the great series that it was.
I think what you and I run into, it's not that we don't appreciate reboots or we don't appreciate people doing new things. We like original material.
Sure.
And so that's the thing is like we hate to think that they're just like the Ninja Turtles. Like they have new Ninja Turtle movies and they've already had Ninja Turtle movies. And it's like, are you going back to that because you think there's good material there? Or are you going back there just to try to make some money?
Because we lose the rights to these characters if we don't make a film with it every 5 or 7
That's
years.
the whole Spider-Man thing.
Yeah.
It's like, as opposed to Battlestar Galactica, which I feel like they went back to that material because they said, you know what, there's some interesting stuff we can do. And there was a story there that supported like a reboot. Kind of like, James Bond, when they did the Daniel Craig thing, they kind of rebooted that. But it was like, let's take all the mythology and kind of reshape it. And they did, and it was very fruitful and it really worked. So it's not that we're against people doing it. We just...
It's tough when the best version of that property was the last version and it was within the last 10 years.
Right. But we're not saying, it's not like with you saying the Ghostbusters thing, people just say, oh, don't redo it. It's like, no.
I want them to do it.
Right.
I'd be very curious to see if we're going to get something of the similar caliber that we got with the TV show.
Sure.
Hey, if they match the caliber, I don't care if they give us new versions of characters and whatever. If it comes anywhere close to that level caliber in a 90 to 120 minute version, I'll be happy. So we'll just see. It's just always a little trepidatious when it's got these fairly recent properties and you never know what the intentions are, like you said.
Sure.
So Chris, what have you got for us news-wise?
Well, we recently talked about Mr. Paul Thomas Anderson.
Which I did finally see that Radiohead video he did. Very good. Yeah.
Good. Daydreaming, yeah.
And I like the song too.
So he's, that's what he's been doing with his time. In addition, he made a documentary about Johnny Greenwood. He did a project, but he made kind of a music documentary. But he did the video for Radiohead. But you may be asking yourself, what's Daniel Day-Lewis doing?
I mean, in all seriousness, that's actually a really good question. What is he doing?
Well, he's been kind of quiet since 2012 when he did Lincoln, of which he got an Oscar.
He's still method acting Lincoln right now.
Probably.
Which is why he's really
he got an Oscar for Lincoln. And before that, he got an Oscar in 2007's There Will Be Blood with Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yes.
Well, now we know what he's been doing, other than probably method acting Mr. Lincoln. Mm-hmm. He has been trying to method act what it would be like to be involved in a film that is about the New York fashion industry in the 1950s. Supposedly, he has been working on a script. Anderson is rumored to be directing.
Oh, Daniel Day-Lewis is working on a script?
Yes, with Paul Thomas Anderson, kind of like back and forth. But it's supposed to be centering around of the New York fashion industry in the 1950s, and it, be the first film since Lincoln, 2012. He's teamed back up with Anderson.
I didn't realize that Daniel Day-Lewis hasn't been in a film since Lincoln.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, and it's a 4-year gap there because it's 2016. I don't think anything's going to really start shooting until 2017. Mm-hmm. But just be interesting to see these guys team up again. Because Daniel Day-Lewis, I really like him, and he does different roles, but I don't know, it would be, if he's willing to make a film and then he's going to team up with Paul Thomas Anderson again, New York, like anybody else, if you just said New York fashion industry in the 1950s, not interested.
Well, I mean, yeah.
It's just like...
I think there's something there, but it has to be the right director doing it.
Right, the right director, and Daniel Day-Lewis is going to be like, okay.
Yeah, and all of a sudden I'm interested.
I'm definitely interested in that, so...
Huh. You know what? I actually caught back up with parts of Inherent Vice again recently, just because I was so mixed on that movie the first time I saw it.
I was mixed on it.
I watched parts of it again. It's good.
Okay.
It is. I think once you've had time to let it settle a little bit and go back and revisit it, it's good. It's still not one of my favorites of his in general. I could think of 3 films right off the bat of P.T. Anderson's I like a lot better. But it's good. I mean, it's definitely got some interesting things going on there. So it's worth checking out again.
See, I'm hoping that P.T. Anderson can bring me back in the fold.
Yeah.
Because he we've talked about him before. You
didn't care for The Master.
No.
And you weren't terribly high on Inherent Vice.
No, I was not high.
You were actually kind of really disappointed with Inherent Vice.
Yeah, it's been sliding for me.
I love The Master. The Inherent Vice, it took me a while to really grasp it. So
my favorite film, and I know you really like Boogie Nights.
Yes.
But my favorite film of his was Magnolia. That just, man.
Well, those two, to me, that was the perfect back-to-back films for a filmmaker. I love both of those films, and I could watch either of those any day of the week again. So, yeah, no, he's a little slip for us, which I know we're kind of in the minority because so many people love There Will Be Blood. And I thought it was good, but I just didn't quite grasp onto it like everybody else and other film critics world did. I
think what I miss about Paul Thomas Anderson is he's a really talented director and he weaves together stories, but Boogie Nights was recent history, and then Magnolia was like present day. So Master, There Will Be Blood, and then the thing that gives me worries about this other one is it's a period. They're period pieces, and I tend not to respond to those as strongly. Okay. So I think if Paul Thomas Anderson were to do another current day movie, I think I'd probably.
You like Punch Drunk Love, right?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah,
so I think that's like that. Maybe that's something about him making more period stuff I don't respond to as strongly.
But it could be. All right. Well, we've been talking our little smaller movies. I mean, Popstar didn't do a whole lot of money at the box office. True. Sing Street, very few people will probably see, unfortunately. Even the Battlestar Galactica, I don't see that if they reboot it. It's going to be a huge blockbuster. I think it's going to be more of a niche sci-fi film if they do it. And then, of course, P.T. Anderson, Daniel Day-Lewis. We're not talking box office bonanza stuff here. So let me bring it home with one story that's a little bit of a bigger budget thing.
Smurfs 3.
Yeah, right. So Rogue One, a Star Wars story. There's been some concerns voiced about this film, which is surprising, but supposedly they've gone back to reshoots. Now, reshooting, what that means for anybody who's kind of curious about that. Basically, they've shot the film, they've put the film together. They showed it to a bunch of studio heads and maybe test audiences or whatever. And normally when you hear a film's going back for a reshoot, it means something's not working in the film.
Right.
And we got to go back. Now, this film comes out in December this year. That's like 6 months from now.
Did the same thing with Suicide Squad.
Yes, it did. And now the angle they're taking, and of course, the studio marketing and PR has to damage control all this.
Absolutely.
If word gets out that, oh my gosh, the Star Wars film is going back for reshoots.
They did reshoots on Force Awakens.
Absolutely. They do reshoots on a lot of movies.
I've heard that supposedly now it's pretty much a set thing, and I think they say maybe Marvel is the one who kind of started this, where they have a line item in the budget for reshoots.
Well, the idea is that you go back, you get some test audience reactions, and people say, I liked it, but I wish this romance was more pronounced. And they all do their little corporate think tank. They sit together and they say, I think our revenue on this box office will go up 18% if we put 30% more love story in the film. And they go back and shoot more love story. It's a business. It's what you do. These aren't independent auteurs just going out and making their films.
Right.
I don't know how much reshooting P.T. Anderson does. Who knows? I don't know if John Carney with Sing Street had to go back and do a lot of reshoots. But typically for the big budget movies, you just expect that
when you're doing franchise stuff, you're just going to kind of know.
Because there's a whole lot more masters you're reporting to them to get this movie right.
Absolutely.
I think the news came out about this just because people are, Force Awakens was so well received and did really well box office and all. So I think there's a little bit of this, okay, so here we are. Here's the downside. We are going to have a kind of a lesser movie coming out this winter. So when they hear there's a lot of reshoots, the rumors at one point were as high as that 40% of the movie was being reshot.
Wow.
That's the rumors. Now, nobody's confirming that anywhere from the studio, but suppose a lot of it's being redone. The biggest issue that the rumors have said why they're going back to reshoot is that there wasn't really any sense of fun in the movie. The rumor I heard is that...
So it's like Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, basically, except... What I heard is that this movie came out is a war movie. It's hardcore war. It's not very fun. It's not very light. It doesn't have that same sense of humor that sometimes Star Wars will just weave into movies. Not counting the prequels, which I didn't find anything funny in those. But
Jar Jar?
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit of they saw, Force Awakens was this huge mammoth hit, one of the biggest grossing films of all time. And I think part of the reason the audience is connected to it is because there's a real warmth and characters and comedy, humor mixed in.
Right.
So I think they're just concerned that they release this film and it's just serious and very gritty and very dark. So what I'm hearing is they're going back to add 16% more light and fun to the film.
Nice.
All I can hear, just like on The Simpsons, the TV studio executives talking about how we need to ramp up the edginess by 8%,
add
whatever.
Some Poochie.
Add some Poochie to the film. So anyway, they're supposedly Christopher McQuarrie, who wrote the script for The Usual Suspects, wrote and directed Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. He's come in with some new script work, and he's helping co-direct the reshoots, but then that rumor got shot down as false. I mean, all this stuff is...
Gareth Edwards, right?
Yeah, Gareth Edwards is the main director.
It's Godzilla Man.
Yep. There have been rumors that J.J. Abrams has been kind of come in to help a little bit. So who knows? Nobody knows what's right. I hope this doesn't affect the way we perceive the film going into it. Is all I'm saying. Is I hope that this is not going to give such bad negative vibes to the movie that in any way it impacts its performance.
Well,
if it's a good film.
We may have discussed it, or maybe not, but I liked the trailer.
No, the trailer was really good.
Yeah.
It was effective, but it was also a very simple teaser trailer.
And I could see, there again, having to judge from a trailer, that it did kind of have kind of a dark tone to it. But to me, what I thought was cool about these, a Star Wars story, is instead of being in the mainline trilogy, but being the spinoffs, was that it could kind of have its own feel. So
style, yeah.
To me, that's a little disappointing that now they're like, well, you went a little bit too far left field. We need to bring you back in towards...
And again, all rumors at this point.
Rumors.
All rumors. I hope that they're not changing the tone of the film. I'm actually kind of excited about seeing a really gritty Star Wars war film.
Right.
That's exciting to me. I'm with you on that. I don't need to have, Ewoks in the movie. I don't need to have comic relief in the movie either. I'm okay with it being an edgier, serious one because I know, hey, if that's not your cup of tea, if that doesn't work for you, guess what? In 12 months, you're going to have episode 8, which is going to carry on pretty much exactly what you got out of episode 7, you're going to get out of episode 8.
Right.
So anyway, I just think it's interesting how I'm sure right now the PR department for this film is having to work overtime to make sure that they quell any concerns, because there's probably a formula somewhere that says this many negative stories that get published affect our box office by this many $1 million.
Something that concerns me, if you're talking about PR departments working overtime, is I've been watching a lot of the NBA, kind of carrying on the same line. I've been watching a lot of the NBA finals.
Oh, really?
And they have been doing spots for the Ghostbusters movie. But they're not showing the preview. They're showing like Kobe Bryant is now a Ghostbuster, or they're showing Spike Lee and some New York Knicks people getting into Ghostbuster uniforms. And not that I mind it, but it's just kind of like, I'm afraid they're trying too hard. It's like, just let the movie come out and kind of speak for itself instead of trying to justify like, no guys, we're still cool. Look, here's Kobe Bryant. He's jumping on board. And it's just like, well, and here's Spike Lee and he's willing to like do a shtick. And I'm just like, I don't know. Well, that actually kind of makes me worry a little bit.
Well, you feel like if they're trying so hard to market a film that it's like they're trying to, all they want to do is get that big opening weekend box office, and they know it's going to drop 60, 70% the next weekend. So go and get all the money they can up front before any bad word get out about the film. And it's a shame. Everybody's still playing to that first opening weekend.
Sure.
Nobody really expects their film to be there for the long haul. Nobody expects it to be a Titanic, where it's just going to be in the theaters for like 12 weeks and just keep building on revenue instead of going down. So everybody's playing to the first opening weekend. And it sucks because there's a lot of really good films that need some exposure in the multiplex, but because it's all about how many screens can we get that movie on the first weekend, and let's pack it in there, and then let's let it drop off pretty quickly after that because people starting to realize it's no good.
Well, and I'll say just a real quick note, because we've gone all over the place with this news segment as well. That's what happens when we have these late night recordings.
It's just we have no barriers.
That's right.
We have no time restraint. That's right. We could keep recording all night
forever.
Nobody makes us stop.
We'll have a 10-hour podcast.
During that work day, it's just, the man sticking it to us and telling us we got to stop at quitting time. But no, we're free and loose tonight.
We talked about Popstar and how it didn't make a lot of money, and but it's still in theaters going on another week. Nice Guys.
Yeah.
We reviewed that film and it disappeared really quickly.
Yep.
And I listeners, at year end, if that film comes up, you can't tell people that you didn't hear about it or you didn't know about it because we talked about it. I feel like that film was a lot better than the 2-week run it had here in Hickory, North Carolina.
Oh,
now,
absolutely.
Other places it may have stayed around longer, but I actually saw comments with some movie critics being like, hey guys, this thing's going to probably leave this week. You better get out there and see it because X-Men Apocalypse is going to come in and wipe it out.
Well, and Chris, I know we are expanding a bit again. It's late night. Why not?
That's right.
This is what makes me worried about the movie industry.
Okay.
And which is why when people bemoan the fact that people are going to start watching movies in their home, I understand why.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why. It's because I can't go to the local multiplex and see Sing Street, which would probably play decent on a single small screen at our multiplex for a couple of weeks.
Right.
It's because, nope, we got to get Batman versus Superman on 8 screens. Oh, now we got X-Men Apocalypse on 8 or 10 screens.
Oh, Civil War. We got to get that on.
Which it's all just about that opening weekend, unfortunately. And they're trying to stop any negative word of mouth from getting out.
Right.
Because they know if it gets once it gets out there, they're going to lose it that second weekend.
Sure.
And that's what just makes me sad because we're losing the opportunity to see a lot of great smaller films because of this glut of wanting to build up the first weekend for films instead of just letting them run a nice leisurely course for 6 or 7 weeks.
Right.
I remember the days when I went to go see Return of the Jedi and it was sold out. I mean, it was on a single screen at the local small movie theater.
Sure.
If you didn't get a ticket to it, you just got to wait for the next screening. And I didn't see it until the second weekend it came out. But nowadays at movie theaters, that just terrifies movie theaters to think that you come to the movie theater and it sells out. Let's have as many screens showing it as possible, even if it means we crowd out some of these smaller films. So
it's a shame.
I'm excited for the fact that, yes, I can still go to the multiplex and watch the big movies, but I hope before too long I could press a button, pay some money, and watch Sing Street on opening weekend at home if I can't watch it at the movie theater. So anyway.
True. Are
we still in news? Is that what we're doing?
I think we're. Okay. I think that was our section, but now I think we're done.
Yes. End news. We're going to move on now to the last segment of our show where we do our recommendations. So the idea here is these are films we're recommending. So we are saying that these are films you ought to check out. Either something we caught up with recently, or maybe we just remember from our past. Or we thought it was a film that just flew under the radar for a lot of people and didn't get a lot of attention. And the goal is to make sure that these are films that you can get access to somehow. So hopefully you don't have to search very hard to find them either online or through some other sources. So Chris, I did the last news item, so why don't you go with the first recommendation for us?
Sure. So 2015 had a lot of good films. One of them that came out that I did not see until recently was Carol.
Oh, you did catch up with that.
I did finally catch up with it. It was Todd Haynes' film. It's starring Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara. Set back in the 50s, maybe. But an aspiring photographer woman who works in a shop develops a relationship with another woman who's in an unhappy marriage.
Yes.
What struck me about this film, just, there again, period pieces. I'm kind of on record not being that big of a fan. And I don't know, I just heard about the movie, and even though I'd heard it was good and the acting was supposed to be really good, it just never, I was like, I'm just not really that interested. Well, I finally caught up with this film, and I can recommend it. The acting, of course, by Cate Blanchett, she's good in everything she does, is good. Rooney Mara was really good. But what I'm really recommending it for is the cinematography.
Yeah.
The cinematography in this film is so cool and just really sets the tone. And it's not just beautiful looking cinematography as in lots of landscapes or something like that. No, it's just people's faces. And then actually the lighting is really interesting where they show people in a department store, things are there's kind of like a green tone. And then when there are moments of happiness, they have this kind of rosiness to them. It's just lots of interesting stuff with lighting and cinematography, and in family settings, it's one way, and it's just really interesting.
Well, there's a lot of use of
perspective.
film grain as well, too. Just some moments where there's some real texture in the film too, which just gives it a really unique look. I like that as well.
So to me, it was just, and it was nominated for cinematography. I don't believe it won.
It did not,
but it just really was very interesting. From some of the very opening shots, I was like, whoa, and that actually. In a way, it was kind of distracting at times because it was so well done with like there's scenes of people in cars and in taxis, and in some frames you'll see them where you'll see their face in like the big pane of a backseat window, and then they'll show you with like their face kind of cordoned off in like the smaller pane in the backseat. And it's like they're being forced into a smaller space. And I don't know, just lots of little comments that are being done with the cinematography that I thought was really interesting. So if, like me, you heard about Care and you're like, I'm not that interested, I would say, maybe give it a shot and check it out, because it's a nice surprise. And the cinematography is really good. Of course, the acting's good, but the cinematography, there was a lot to look at on screen as far as what they were doing with the camera.
I completely agree. I think I may have mentioned it really quickly in passing at some point when we did our Oscar recap, kind of talking about the things there. No, Carol was a great surprise for me. I really had no desire to see it when it came out, or was not terribly interested. Only saw it because it was nominated for some things, and I wanted to be a completist with my viewing. But yeah, Carol was a great surprise.
And I'm going to do something that we don't normally do. I think you've recommended TV shows before.
I have. Because I'm a rule breaker. You can't pigeonhole me.
So I recommended a movie, but I'm also going to recommend a book about movies.
Okay.
I just finished reading this.
This may be a first, by the way.
I think it is. It's the Wes Anderson Collection by Matt Zoller Seitz. And what he's done at the time when this book came out, which is 2013, so it's before Grand Budapest Hotel. He starts back with Bottle Rocket, and he does all the movies through Wes Anderson's filmography. He does a short little review, and then he'll do a conversation Q&A with Wes Anderson where he asks him about each film. And in this book are all these production stills and then hand-drawn drawings of storyboards that Wes Anderson's done. For Fantastic Mr. Fox, you see production models and all this stuff. You can really geek out to all the production, which if you've ever seen a Wes Anderson film, which if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have.
Probably have.
You can tell how much production design and costume design and all the intricacies that go into one of his films. And to me, I like Wes Anderson. I like his films, some more than others. But after reading this book, I really want to go back and watch all of his films, because you can really appreciate this guy puts a lot of himself. Not that every filmmaker doesn't put themselves in the movies, but his movies, you're just whoa. And just there's things in the movies, even the ones that, for example, The Royal Tenenbaums. I really like that movie, but reading some of the background and some of the production stuff that went into making that movie, I'm like, whoa, I'd never thought about that. Haven't seen that. I want to go back and see all the Easter eggs that he's placed in the movie.
Oh, wow.
So
that's great.
I can't recommend the book high enough. It's the Wes Anderson Collection by Matt Zoller Seitz. And actually he did this book, and then he came out with a book that was just Grand Budapest Hotel. And I haven't read that one yet, but I was going to say
Grand Budapest is pretty heavy production. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Every time I've seen it, I catch more things I didn't notice before. Just out of curiosity, favorite Wes Anderson film?
See, I need to go back and watch them again, because now I think if I could watch them closer together, I would have a better answer. I'm going to probably say, I'll say The Royal Tenenbaums.
Boom. Yes, you are correct. That is it. Yeah. It is The Royal Tenenbaums.
But I think if I were to go back and watch Life Aquatic now, because I was let down. That was one of my least favorite.
Yeah.
But I think if I were to go back and watch it now, I would appreciate a lot more what it's doing.
I've seen Life Aquatic a few times. It's good. I have moments I really admire. The train one.
Yes.
The Darjeeling Limited is the one I need to go back and watch again, because I watched it and was not
I think I'm one of the
with it.
rare people that I really liked that movie.
Yeah.
And now, after reading about it, I really need to go back and
that one just. I just remember going in with such high expectations and watching it and walking away saying, just didn't work. At that point, that was where I was kind of saying, you know what, Wes Anderson, maybe you need to start doing a different type of film, because this is getting a little much.
And then he did Fantastic Mr. Fox.
He did Fantastic Mr. Fox, which was great. He did Moonrise Kingdom, which I really liked. And then he did Grand Budapest Hotel. And I'm like, okay, no, you can keep doing whatever you want to do, Mr. Anderson. Please don't listen to me anymore.
And his next one's stop animation again.
Is it really? Okay, good. I'm fine with what he's doing. I'm fine with it. I really did enjoy Grand Budapest Hotel. That to me, that was after Royal Tenenbaums, Rushmore. Fantastic Mr. Fox, and Grand Budapest Hotel. Those are like,
Gotcha.
to me, that's the best films he's done.
Can see
So it's
that.
about half of his film collection I really think are great. So
Can see that.
okay, well,
So what's your recommendation?
shoot, well, after talking about Wes Anderson, this one feels like a little bit of a letdown. It's a good movie, and I'm recommending it just because of some of the choices they made with it. But I will say it's not a perfect movie by any means.
Are you doing Draft Day again?
Yeah, Draft Day 2. I'm going to talk about the sequel,
Awesome.
Kevin Costner Returns. No. This is, I did Draft Day last time, and that wasn't really my highest recommendation either. I've recommended all of the really good movies I've seen that we haven't talked about in our show already. So I'm going to need to either rejuvenate my recommendation list, or I need to just really pack in some more movies to watch in the next few weeks. But anyway, Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. This is with Steve Carell and Keira Knightley. See my connection, Keira Knightley,
Again.
because from Begin Again, she was in that film.
There we go.
And that's probably why I ended up watching this, because I thought, Keira Knightley, she's been getting some crap lately from John Carney on the news. I mean, he basically said he wouldn't work with another, quote, supermodel, which is what he was referring to Keira Knightley as. And then other directors that have worked with Keira Knightley have come to her defense on Twitter and other places saying she's a consummate professional. I don't know what John Carney's talking about. She's so great. John Carney was complaining about her entourage and having all these people around her when he was making the movie. I think she's the reason he went to Sing Street and said, yeah, I don't want to do a big movie anymore.
Okay.
I want to go back small. Anyway, all that
Interesting.
aside, she is in this movie with Steve Carell. Basically, an asteroid's coming to Earth. It's a foregone conclusion. The Earth is going to be blown up in like a few days. So this is about a guy who kind of having to deal with that situation along with just some overall depression on his own. His wife just ups and leaves him for having an affair. He doesn't have any kids. I mean, he's just really alone at this point, ticking away, waiting for the Earth to blow up.
This is a comedy?
Well, that's where I'm going to get to with this discussion.
Okay.
It was marketed as a comedy. It's got Steve Carell in the lead. You think it's going to be funny. And I will say the first half of the movie, it's a very witty humor about the situation. Like every time they show a news report where the news reporters are talking about this end of the world, if you watch the scroll along the bottom, the little CNN headlines are really funny because you could tell the guys in the control booth just don't care anymore. So they're making really deadpan comments about, we're all screwed type of thing. So it's real humor in the mix. And there are some scenes that are very funny. Basically this character that Steve Carell plays, whose name is Brad. No, I'm sorry, Dodge. He has a weird name, Dodge. I don't know why they did that. Dodge, he's going through some kind of depression, and of course the world's getting ready to end.
That would cause depression.
Yeah, he meets a neighbor in his building, Penny, played by Keira Knightley, who's a little more free spirit and just has a very unique take on life. And they find out that they actually have a little bit of connection between them. She's done something that has really negatively impacted his life that they didn't realize. And by now knowing this, they're going to go on a road trip to see if they can fix this situation. So the first half of the movie is really interesting. It's a little quirky. It's got some good comedy to it. They go on a road trip, and on this road trip, they meet some interesting characters, which makes the film really kind of bizarre. There's actually a scene where they stumble across a restaurant out in the middle of nowhere, where basically the people who work there are so resigned to the fact that the world's going to blow up that they just decide that they're just going to make everything over the top party, fun, humor in this restaurant. And it's bizarre because you go in and it's just, they're having conga lines nonstop. They're it starts to turn into almost like an orgy in this restaurant just because these guys are just we just don't care. We're just going to have fun at our place now. TGI Fridays on crack is basically what this place has become.
Okay.
So it's got some really good, funny moments. But what I want to say as a recommendation is that the last third of the movie, it's very serious and it's very sad and it's very emotional and it's very love story, but also with a really, depressing ending. So I kind of watched the end of the film being like, whoa, I'm kind of surprised they ended that way because I totally thought from the first half of this movie, they were going to find some way to bring it out to a really happy, satisfying, maybe crisis averted type of ending. Nope, they did not. It was pretty much I say it's a depressing ending, but of course for the main character, he actually ends in a much happier place than he did the beginning of the film. So I recommend the film simply because of the choices they made.
Okay.
This was not a commercial film, even though they tried to market it as a comedy when the trailers came out. I remember seeing those. I think anybody who went to this movie theater expecting a comedy, probably at the end of it was like, oh, that sucked. Because it just was not a comedy at the end at all.
Sure.
It actually has a lot to say about relationships with fathers and loved ones and just what does it all mean at the end of the day. So there's a lot more going on. It's not a perfect movie by any means.
Okay.
The mixed tone of it just, I think, threw a lot of people off.
Okay.
But I will say it's worth checking out. And, I wanted to say was Keira Knightley a good actress? Yeah, she was good in this. Was Steve Carell a good dramatic actor? Yeah, actually he was. He pulled off a good part. So I enjoyed the film. I think it's worth checking out.
Okay.
That's Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. That came out in 2012. It is on Netflix right now, so you can't easily see it. So that is our 2 recommendations. Carol, which I can also echo the recommendation. Very good movie. Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. I'm giving it a general recommendation. It's worth checking out for some interesting choices. We talked about Battlestar Galactica. We talked about P.T. Anderson and Daniel Day-Lewis. We talked about Star Wars, possible reshoots, and is that trouble or not? And of course, we started off with our reviews of both Sing Street, terribly emphatic recommendations from us, and then Popstar, Never Stop, Never Stopping. Chris giving a very high recommendation.
Yeah.
Me, I'm giving a fair recommendation. So overall, we had a good episode.
Yes.
I mean, we're not down on anything. I think we're all pretty upbeat about the movies we talked about. A lot of good options to check out after listening to this episode. So,
Absolutely.
Chris, somebody agrees or disagrees with us about any of these reviews, which I'm sure there are some people out there that will. What should they do?
You can send us an email at info@themesh.tv and just tag it somehow, subject line or somewhere, and say it's for Footcandle Films, and let us know what you did or did not agree with us with our reviews. Let us know a movie that's coming out that you want us to review, or maybe one that's come out that's really good that nobody knows of and you think we should review. Just let us know. So send us an email at info@themesh.tv.
I think somebody's going to recommend Hot Rod. That's kind of where I'm feeling things are going to go. Yeah.
Could be. That would be scary, but could be. Also, Al and I are both on Letterboxd, so you can find kind of a diary that we keep on there of films that we're watching and maybe short little mini reviews. Also, I would be remiss if I did not mention in Hickory, where the show is recorded, we are going to have our 2nd annual Footcandle Film Festival, September 23rd through the 25th. So more information about like tickets and the films that we're going to be showing will be coming out, but just clear your calendar if you would like to come to the 2nd annual Footcandle Film Festival.
We don't want to hear that you've got a daughter getting married or got a big trip to Antarctica planned for that weekend. No. Cancel it, reschedule it.
And you can't say,
come to Hickory.
My child's going to be born. We've got hospitals here.
Oh, yeah.
So,
we got 2 very good hospitals right here.
So there your
Bring
child
the pregnant
can be born
wife.
here.
It's all good.
That's right.
Baby can be born here, and you can still make it back to the theater, to the film festival to catch at least the latter half of the shows later that day. We understand. You have a baby. You want to spend some time with the wife and baby. But once the baby goes to sleep, come on over and watch the movies.
That's right.
Just for the record, I'm not at all advocating that. But anyway, we want you to come to the festival.
Although if you did it, it would be amazing.
It would be all. Please tell us if you did that. If that happened to you. That would be really cool. So yeah, the film festival should be a lot of fun. I think we're really excited about it, and got some good films getting queued up right now. So very, very fun stuff. Yeah, absolutely. So that is our show. Again, thanks for listening, and check us out on themesh.tv, and go back and listen to old episodes and let us know what you think. And until next episode, we'll just take care. We'll talk to you soon.
See you in the ticket line.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.